Hi friends! Can't lose weight? My colleague lost 30 pounds in 8 months by giving up one thing, sugar substitutes. And you may be surprised that most sugar substitutes don't help you lose weight, and in fact can make you gain weight along with other unwanted health effects. There is, however, one sugar substitute that tastes sweet but doesn't raise your blood sugars and helps you burn fat. Too good to be true? I'll get to that guy a little later. So how did my friend do it? And by the way, she's a medical doctor that has been using sugar substitutes for decades like I did. We were both addicted to diet soda. I gave up my diet soda addiction for probably over 2 decades now. And here is a typical ingredient list of a diet soda. Now, before I explain how drinking sugar substitutes can make you gain weight despite having little to zero calories, can you guess the 3 ingredients that are potentially carcinogenic in sodas? I'll come back to this a little later to see if you're correct. Now, my friend noticed she was getting whiter and whiter at her hips, and it dawned on her one day that she was fooling her brain drinking diet sodas, thinking she was avoiding calories. But in fact, it was doing the opposite. The issue is, my friend, like millions of other people, had underestimated the critical role of metabolic health. And it's not just the metabolism of your own cells. You can fool your brain, but you cannot fool your metabolism, nor can you fool the metabolism of your gut microbiome. In trying to satisfy her brain's cravings, she unknowingly damaged her metabolism and the metabolism of her gut microbiome. And by doing so, she made herself hungrier and more insulin resistant. Now, I know several people whose husbands got cancer, and they think it's directly related to their addiction to diet soda. All of their husbands, by the way, were all obese, and some were sumo size. So what's in diet soda that could potentially give them cancer? Well, maybe it's the aspartame. And by the way, not all diet sodas have a chemical called aspartame. Some use sucralose and saccharin and even erythritol, or a combination of these chemicals. The thing is, a little bit of these chemicals probably isn't a big deal. But what if you're drinking cans and cans and bottles of soda every day, and then eating other items with these sugar substitutes? It all adds up. It's like a penny. By itself, it doesn't make much of a difference in your piggy bank, but if you collect a penny throughout the day for many days over many years, that could be a lot of money. Unfortunately, sugar substitutes tax your health. Now, there's still controversy about aspartame and its health effects. Many scientists, they think they know all about it, that they're safe, and they know all the science because it's the most well-studied sugar sweetener. After all, the FDA believes that aspartame is generally safe if you consume them under the suggested amounts. And for aspartame, that's 50 milligrams a kilograms of body weight per day, which works out to be about 17 to 18 cans of diet soda, or 75 equals, or NutraSweets, or 23 Splendas, sweet ones, or Nutames, or 45 Sweet and Lows. Or maybe you're a Truvia's fan. That would be 9 packets. The thing is, scientists, or people in general, they don't really appreciate their limitations. It's the unknown that usually ends up getting you. And people aren't perfect, even the FDA. In fact, a third of their approved drugs has safety problems after approval. And by the way, aspartame is not 0 calories. It actually has the same calories as pure sugar, but it is about 200 times sweeter than sugar, so you can just use less of it. But do you really want to eat a possible carcinogen to humans as declared by the World Health Organization in 2023? The FDA, though, they want definitive proof before this artificial chemical, which offers no nutritional value, to be pulled from the market. Aspartame is not heat stable, so don't bake with it. It's been on the market since the 1980s, with the first product marketed as NutraSweet in 1981. If you've ever bought any products with aspartame, it'll come with a warning label. For people who have phenylketonuria, which is a rare genetic disorder that makes them unable to metabolize phenylalanine. Check your sugar-free gum ingredients. Many of them have aspartame. I used to chew a lot of Trident brand gum that was recommended by our dentist because I had a lot of cavities from chewing sugary gum and sucking on candy. Oh, and drinking regular soda. Aspartame is a peptide similar to collagen peptides, but only 2 amino acids make aspartame, aspartic acid, and phenylalanine. So how is this a problem? Well, when you eat it, aspartame actually breaks into 3 different ingredients: aspartic acid, phenylalanine, and methanol. Methanol is not an amino acid, and hence the problem. Methanol metabolizes into formaldehyde. Have you ever smelled formaldehyde? That's the smell of the gross anatomy lab in medical school. Formaldehyde is a group 1 carcinogen known to cause nasopharyngeal cancer and leukemia in people. It's literally an embalming agent. You may be surprised that your body naturally makes a tiny amount of formaldehyde from the metabolism of methylation reactions. However, your cells can detox that quickly into formic acid. That's because you were designed to do that under normal circumstances. The problem arises when external exposure, like ingesting aspartame, can overwhelm the detoxification system. It's akin to water, flushing your toilet, turning on your sink and faucet. Not a problem. Your house is equipped to deal with that. But when your roof is leaking from the rain or you have a melting ice dam on it, well, that will damage your house. I've had experience with both. It's not fun. High levels of methanol and formaldehyde are highly toxic with high mortality and morbidity and can cause blindness, heart and brain damage when ingested. Inhalation and absorption through the skin is less toxic. Methanol is used in paints, varnishes, windshield wiper fluid, and antifreeze. And believe it or not, people have ingested these products. So we're not talking about super high levels when we're eating aspartame or drinking fermented beverages. Methanol is rapidly absorbed, however, in the gastrointestinal tract in less than 10 minutes and reaches the peak plasma concentration in 30 minutes to an hour. 11% of the aspartame that you ingest in your diet soda is converted to methanol. This means that if you drink a can of diet soda, you will absorb 60 milligrams of methanol because a can has roughly 600 milligrams of aspartame. According to the USDA, to cause toxicity, you would need 200 to 500 milligrams of methanol per kilogram of body weight. So why is there an elevated risk of cancer in those ingesting aspartame? There's probably several reasons besides making toxic byproducts. Several studies have shown that people who drink diet sodas, they don't actually lose weight and in fact gain weight. There are few people who can drink diet sodas regularly and not have an abnormally high amount of bad body fat. That visceral fat is a metabolically active organ. Not all fat is bad, but visceral fat, the fat that is gained when you drink diet sodas, that's pretty bad. And when you are obese with a collection of visceral fat, you have a higher rate of cancer. How do you know if you're obese or just overweight or athletic? Obesity is a medical diagnosis of having excessively high amounts of body fat, which is determined by your body mass index. And a BMI of 30 or higher meets the definition of obesity. Obese people can be strong and active. Take sumo wrestlers, a 2,000-year-old sport. So this proves that you can be both obese and athletic. They have an average BMI of around 38.2. In simple terms, obesity is a consequence of an energy excess state. Japanese sumo wrestlers have perfected the art of having an energy excess state while maintaining body strength. Unfortunately, even athletic sumo wrestlers succumb to energy excess health problems such as arthritis, breathing issues, diabetes, and heart disease. And in our modern times, you don't have to be obese to have these energy excess diseases. You can be thin on the outside and fat on the inside. Those people have TOFI, which will also make you susceptible to diseases of energy excess, such as high blood pressure, diabetes, heart disease, and cancers. The thing is, even though artificial sweeteners have technically less calories and sugars, it's not metabolically inert, and it doesn't mean it won't make you more insulin resistant. In fact, it can significantly affect your gut microbiome, as demonstrated in animal studies. Now, these studies are hard to do in people, because who's going to restrict their diets? You can't exactly control human diets like you can control animal diets. We know that the wrong bacteria can potentially increase your risk of cancer and promote obesity. Another driver of obesity is insulin resistance. And many people think that when you eat artificial sweeteners, you don't increase your insulin levels. And that is partially true. When you eat it by itself, you don't increase your insulin because you're not eating any carbohydrates. But you can't survive on artificial sweeteners. You have to eat some food sometime. And when do people drink diet sodas? Well, when they're eating fast food. And when you eat carbohydrate-rich foods with aspartame, you become more insulin resistant. you have higher insulin levels and higher blood sugar levels that are more prolonged. Hence, sugar substitutes falsely give people the perception that they will lose weight, control their blood sugars, lower their insulin. In fact, aspartame has been shown to increase body fat, increase weight, and obesity when consumed in large amounts, which is drinking half a can of Diet Coke per day. Now, if you regularly drink at least half a can of Diet Coke daily, you will have more visceral fat than those who consume little to no aspartame over several years. And by the way, there were other health issues with aspartame. It's been linked to tinnitus, hearing loss, migraines, and movement disorders. Now, I'm not sure if those people were tested for phenylalanine levels, and maybe they have a variant of PKU. Now, if this isn't enough, there are reports of aspartame increasing bladder pain. And this is relevant to my specialty, infectious disease, as oftentimes people feel like they have a urinary tract infection, but their urine analysis and culture all come back negative. There are over 6,000 food products with aspartame. We assume people are just drinking diet soda, but that's not the reality. People who drink diet drinks generally look for other diet foods. I can attest to that. When I was reaching sugar substitutes, I found this document by the American Diabetics Association. Now I can understand why they recommend sugar substitutes and sugar-free products. Part of it is because they stand for just lowering your sugar intake. Maybe that's why they partnered with Splenda. But they have the sugar science all wrong, and they have lumped foods such as whole fruits, whole beans, and whole grains in the same categories as sodas, sweetened teas, juices. Now, I don't know when they made this document up, but they really had the science of sugar half right. Multiple studies have shown that the more fruit you eat, the less your risk of diabetes. And when you add whole beans, which is a superfood, and then you add whole grains, you actually improve your sugar control and you lower your weight. They seem to have confused chemistry. I don't think they have a chemistry background. I don't think they paid attention in physics. I don't think they have a biochemistry background. Whoever made this policy up have confused chemical ingredients with nutritious ingredients that are trapped in a food matrix. And this food matrix isn't just wrapping paper, it's full of fiber and phytonutrients that serve as anti-inflammatory antioxidants to help people regulate their blood sugars, their blood lipids, and their body fat. And if you eat whole foods as opposed to chemical ingredients, you can't help but lower your body weight, improve your overall health, and lower your body fat composition, improve your cholesterol panels, improve your blood sugars, and reduce your insulin resistance. I mean, literally eating whole foods, especially whole plant foods, that's a longevity lifestyle to do. That is not like eating sugar or sugar substitutes or dissecting these ingredients into like white bread or pizza or pasta. And on the second page, they have this word, eat these things in moderation. Now, swallowing a nutritional vitamin is not the same as swallowing Splenda or other artificial sweeteners. There's literally no health benefit in these artificial sweeteners. And seeing how they are a giant sponsor of the American Diabetes Association, I can understand why they kept it on the list as stuff to eat. Unlike aspartame, sucralose is used for baking and cooking. I personally wouldn't do it. Heat causes thermal degradation, and glycerol and sucralose react chemically to form toxic chemicals. Glycerol is another food additive to improve the texture of baked goods. Have you read the ingredients of your favorite baked goods? I would honestly rather eat fish grown in a giant toilet bowl than chemically concocted carb creations. Sucralose can easily dissolve in cold liquids and are found in popular drinks because they are very water soluble. It's poorly absorbed, so the majority will be excreted in your poop. Seems like an ideal sweetener that you don't absorb. However, it's not benign because what is between your mouth and your anus? Gut microbes. They will convert the sucralose into metabolites that have been found in human fat tissue. Like aspartame, sucralose has been shown to worsen insulin resistance in people with type 2 diabetes. Yet the American Diabetes Association is endorsed by sucralose. But you don't have to have diabetes to get insulin resistance. Clinical studies in humans have shown that regular consumption of sucralose made normal people without diabetes more insulin resistant. Now, of course, in order to see the symptoms of insulin resistance, you're going to have to eat carbohydrates. If you don't eat carbohydrates, you won't notice you're more insulin resistance. And this is counterintuitive to an ingredient that is supposed to have 0 calories and are poorly absorbed. Hi friends, I am so thrilled that you want to take charge of your health and take charge of your food. Now, I know nutrition can be complex, but it doesn't have to be. And I'm here to support you in this lifelong journey. So if you point your camera app to this QR code, it'll take you to a link for a free handout that I created just for you. And if you like it, if you want to see other handouts, please go to the link in my show notes and then you can leave me your feedback on what I could do to help you in your journey. Okay, back to the video now. So when you ignore your gut microbiome, well, you are ignoring the most powerful immune and metabolic organ that can improve or destroy your metabolism. And this change starts happening with just one meal because bacteria can clone itself every 15 minutes. And when you regularly consume sucralose, you will increase Blautia-Coccoides bacteria by 4-fold. This bacteria is higher in people with insulin resistance. Another popular sweetener is saccharin, or sweet and low, which is one of the oldest artificial sweeteners. Here's the chemical name. I'm not even going to try to pronounce it. It too has 0 calories because it's not supposed to be in our food. But it tastes sweet, 200 to 700 times sweeter than sugar. Not surprisingly, it has an aftertaste because it's not supposed to be in food. It's a chemical from tar. Saccharin was discovered by accident in 1879 by a lab at Hopkins who was experimenting with coal tar derivatives, benzoic sulfamide, and then he noticed a sweet taste in his hand. Back then, they used to taste everything, urine, lab creations, and they didn't wash their hands. A year later, it was being manufactured to sell in Germany. But many people were against the food additive, including the head chemist at the U.S. Department of Agriculture. However, these people, they serve at the pleasure of the U.S. president. And at the time, it was President Theodore Roosevelt, who said anyone who says saccharin is injurious to health is an idiot. And so he got fired. Roosevelt died at the age of 61 in his sleep and suffered from massive inflammation about 2.5 months before his death. And the guy he fired, Dr. Harvey Washington Wiley, he was a chemist and physician. He died at the age of 86. He established the Good Housekeeping Seal of Approval for consumer products and was a pioneer in advocating against food adulteration for the public. Seems like scientists may know more than politicians. This is just another example of how politics has silenced good scientists and physicians, and we the public suffer the consequences. History is on repeat. Saccharin has been shown to cause bladder cancer in rats, so it was listed in 1982 as a human carcinogen. But in 2000, it was taken off the list as a mechanism in which it caused cancer in rats doesn't happen to humans. However, it's been linked to painful bladder syndrome, interstitial cystitis. Again, why are we debating about stuff that has no health benefits? Another sweetener is erythritol, which happens to be an all-natural sugar found in your body. It's made by you. It's also found in fruits, fermented foods, mushrooms, and sold purified as a low-calorie sweetener. It is less sweet than sugar and has nearly half the calories. The thing is, erythritol, again, is naturally found in food in small amounts. And at any given time, your body will make erythritol, and you will have different amounts flowing in your blood from different amounts of glucose. So depending on your insulin resistance, you may make more or less. In 2023, a study published in Nature Medicine investigated the relationship with erythritol levels and cardiovascular events. The researchers found that individuals with higher plasma erythritol concentrations had an increased risk of heart attacks, strokes, or death over a 3-year period. Now, specifically, those in the highest quartile of erythritol levels were about twice as likely to experience such events compared to those in the lowest quartile of erythritol. And in a control experiment within the study, like 8 healthy volunteers consumed a beverage containing 30 grams of erythritol. Now, this is not a natural amount. It's not like eating regular food. It's like drinking 3 cans of diet soda. And we've already declared that diet soda isn't a health food. Now, this led to more than a 1,000-fold increase in their plasma erythritol levels, which remained elevated for several days. And at those elevated levels, it was sufficient enough to enhance platelet reactivity, potentially increasing the risk of clotting. Now, this is very different from eating fruit we know that the people who eat more fruit, they have less cardiovascular events. And it's important to note that while this study highlights a potential association between mega dosing something that's all natural, like erythritol, and cardiovascular risk, it does not establish a direct causal relationship. And it also doesn't account that the study participants were already super sick, so they were probably making higher erythritol levels in their bodies naturally. Over 16% of the participants had heart failure. A fifth of them had diabetes. Over 40% already had prior heart attacks, and over 70% had documented coronary artery disease and high blood pressure. And then they give them non-nutritive sweeteners. Anybody with all these problems are at a higher risk of cardiovascular events independent of their erythritol consumption. And you don't have to consume erythritol to have higher levels. In fact, the higher your blood sugars are, the more erythritol your body will make. The pentose phosphate pathway, which is an alternative branch of glycolysis that produces a powerful antioxidant, NACPH, and the sugars needed to make DNA and RNA ribose. And people with chronic metabolic diseases, they have more oxidative stress, and they need more RNA because it's generating inflammatory cytokines. So it makes sense that the body wants to make more antioxidants and have a greater need of RNA, and therefore have a more active pentophosphate pathway, which occurs in your cellular cytoplasm. Now, there are two parts of the pentophosphate pathway, the oxidative phase and the reversible non-oxidative phase. The oxidative phase makes two energy currencies, two NADPH antioxidant molecules, and ribulose 5-phosphate, the sugar that makes your DNA and RNA. DNA, remember, literally makes your genes, and RNA is a translator for your genes that creates the inflammatory proteins called cytokines. Now, the neat thing about ribulose 5-phosphate is that this sugar is so versatile that you can do whatever your body needs to be done. It can go and make DNA, RNA, or it can go back into glycolysis and make you ATP. This study added a tracer to glucose molecules given to human blood cells and measured the amount of erythritol after 120 minutes or 2 hours. So the higher your blood sugars, the more erythritol your body makes. All human cells can make erythritol from glucose, and when you get more insulin resistance, you have higher blood sugars, which takes longer for you to get down. So you will be making more erythritol. Now, when you went to college, do you remember the freshman 15? Most freshmen gain about 15 pounds living in the dorms, right? And when you gain that kind of weight, it's going to go straight to your abdomen to become central adiposity, belly fat, or visceral fat. That leads to fatty liver and atherosclerosis. This is syndrome X. And people with syndrome X have a very active pentophosphate pathway. So these people, they will make more erythritol. Sick people also have more inflammation, causing an increase in pentose phosphate pathway activity, which will make more erythritol. So the relationship between exogenous erythritol and cardiovascular events isn't so clear. And whenever you eat fruits like melons, watermelons, pears, and grapes, you're actually eating some erythritol. Have you ever eaten at a Japanese restaurant and drank sake, miso soup, or eaten teriyaki chicken? Sake has 70 times more erythritol than watermelon. Miso has 60 times more, and soy sauce has 40 times more. It is estimated that people normally consume 1 gram of erythritol daily in their regular foods. After you eat erythritol, 90% is absorbed in your small intestine. And after absorption, 90 to 95% of erythritol is excreted unchanged in the urine. The other 5 to 10% gets oxidized into erythrose and then into erythronate. And as a result, most of it doesn't even reach your gut microbiome in your large intestine. Now, when you buy pure erythritol, you will notice it's about 60 to 70% as sweet as sugar. It only has 5% of the calories per gram of sugar. It also doesn't raise your blood sugar or insulin levels. It makes high-intensity sweeteners like stevia and aspartame in drinks taste better. It has also a few gastrointestinal problems, but it doesn't draw water to the gut, so it's much better tolerated. It does add bulk to processed foods to improve texture, but every ingredient has its limit. High doses of erythritol, about 4 tablespoons, which is at least 51 grams, can cause nausea, stomach rumbling, bloating, and diarrhea. However, some people have these problems at 1 tablespoon, which is 13 grams, which is about the amount in a diet soda can. Now, that's a lot of erythritol. and it should be avoided. So many of you have asked why I still have erythritol in my supplement. I don't have a problem eating low levels of erythritol, which I explain is naturally found in low levels in my food. And when I'm pairing it with something that I feel is more nutritious, then it's worth making that thing more palatable. And even if you actually took 4 packets of my supplement a day, the erythritol content is nowhere near the amount of erythritol in a diet soda. Now, let's talk about an all-natural sugar substitute that doesn't raise blood sugars and supposedly can help you burn fat. That's allulose. Now, technically, allulose is another natural sugar like erythritol. In fact, it is a mirror image of fructose. In chemistry, substrates fit into enzymes like puzzles. And if you don't have the exact shape, the chemical reaction won't happen. And this is the story with fructose and its exact opposite metabolic twin, allulose. Now, by now, you all know fructose is natural, but concentrating it worsens insulin sensitivity and makes you pack on fat. Allulose appears to have the opposite effect. It seems to improve insulin sensitivity and reduce lipids and lower blood sugars after meals. Allulose also stimulates the release of GLP-1, which helps to increase satiety. Now, technically, when you eat fruits, you are eating trace amounts of allulose, just like trace amounts of erythritol. So maybe this is another reason why eating fruit is more beneficial for people with diabetes and prediabetes. However, concentrating allulose in the supermarket is probably synthetically made from messing with fructose. Now, we got a lot of people talking about allulose as if it's some kind of miracle drug. It tastes sweet, yet it helps to lower blood sugar and fat, unlike the artificial sweeteners or natural sweeteners like high fructose corn syrup, agave, honey, or sugar. All those increase visceral fat. Unfortunately, it seems that allulose mostly affects subcutaneous fat, which is not as metabolically dangerous as visceral fat. Visceral fat, though, is what makes you insulin resistant. So far, there are promising small studies that have shown that allulose may help reduce oxidative stress. So it seems that small amounts, like in fruit, may be beneficial. But like most things in life, the dose makes the poison. The higher the dose, the more stomach upset, bloating, and diarrhea people get. The upper limit of tolerance can vary depending on each person. And when you eat allulose, 70% is not absorbed and will get fermented in the colon. The rest is excreted unchanged in the urine and appears to help draw out blood sugar in the urine to potentially increase the risk of urinary tract infections. Kind of works like an SGLT2 inhibitor, although on a mild level. Americans currently eat over 100 pounds of sugar in a year. Sugar by itself is a chemical that we have confused with food. If you bake with allulose to replace sugar, it's a 1-to-1 replacement. So that means you'll be eating 100 pounds of allulose in a year? Does that sound right to you? I don't think any of these molecules, no matter how natural we're talking about, was meant to be consumed in that amount. In life, if it seems too good to be true, it probably is. So what's the catch with allulose? It's probably going to change your gut microbiome. Just because you can't metabolize it doesn't mean your microbes can't metabolize it. In fact, the more allulose you eat, the more Klebsiella pneumonia you will likely have in your gut. Now, Klebsiella pneumonia is actually a normal gut flora, but it's usually in low amounts. However, if you eat its food, that means you're going to give it to them. And then you'll have abnormally high levels of Klebsiella pneumonia, which, by the way, can cause urinary tract infections, pneumonia, bloodstream infections, line sepsis, liver abscesses, wound infections, and even meningitis. We're beginning to learn that substances in low levels in nature, they shouldn't be concentrated, eaten in bulk, like guar gum, carrageenan, and fructose, and probably allulose. And as we learn more about allulose, I think we should all be cautious about excess consumption. I prefer to access my allulose in its original source, the whole fruit. And if you want to learn the best fruits to eat, watch the next video.